Welcome to this deep dive into a challenge that vexes almost every language learner. Training your ears for fast English speech. If you've ever felt like native speakers are talking at like warp speed, like you're trying to catch a runaway train of words, deciphering everything from gonna to whatchamactale, then you, my friend, are absolutely in good company. Our mission today is to help you literally tune your ears, to not just hear, but to truly comprehend and decode the incredible, sometimes dizzying flow of rapid English. Think of it like learning to dance to a brand new beat feels impossible at first, right? But with the right steps, you'll soon move with the rhythm.
Absolutely. And what's truly fascinating, and I'd say maybe even more fun than you might think, is that overcoming this isn't just possible. It's about fundamentally rewiring your brain. In this deep dive, we're not just going to tell you what to do. We'll unpack why fast English feels so elusive, explore the hidden mechanics behind quick speech, and then arm you with practical, engaging strategies. These aren't just tips. They're approaches that fundamentally shift your brain from struggling to keep up to intuitively anticipating and understanding. We're talking about building those neural pathways, those internal phonetic maps, so that what once sounded like just a blur suddenly has identifiable street names.
That's a powerful idea. Building internal maps. But before we jump into the how-to of tuning those ears, what exactly makes fast English feel like such a complex puzzle?
All right.
I mean, it's more than just raw speed, isn't it? Sometimes it feels like all the words just melt into one big blob.
It really does. And I think identifying these core challenges is the crucial first step to actually overcoming them. It's not about agonizing over memorizing every single word you hear, but more about getting your brain comfortable with the overall flow and rhythm. What's fascinating here is it's almost never just the speed, although that certainly plays a role. Speed is what you notice, but the actual linguistic culprits are often far more subtle and, frankly, quite fascinating. One of the biggest and perhaps most common challenges is what linguists call connected speech.
Connected speech, right?
Native speakers don't pronounce each word perfectly in isolation. We blend words together, creating these linguistic shortcuts. It's a lot like making a smoothie. You put in individual ingredients, bananas, berries, yogurt, but it all comes out as one single blended mixture.
The smoothie analogy really resonates.
Yeah.
It certainly feels that way sometimes. So, for instance, what are you doing often morphs into what you're doing.
Exactly.
Or I do not know
Yeah.
frequently becomes the much shorter I don't know. It's as if words are actively changing form.
And these aren't just lazy pronunciations. They're actually governed by natural phonetic processes. You get things like elision, where sounds just disappear. Like the T in 20 often drops out, so it sounds like 20 in fast speech.
So the sound itself literally vanishes. Wow, that's a significant difference from how the word is written.
Precisely. Or you have assimilation, where a sound changes to become more like a sound next to it, like imbalance might sound like imbalance, because that in sound takes on qualities of the B that follows it.
Ah, okay, so it adapts to its neighbors.
Right. And then there's linking, where a consonant at the end of a word flows right into a vowel starting the next word. Pick it up.
Pick it up. Yeah, it sounds like one word.
Understanding these micro shifts is like having X-ray vision for that sound smoothie. You can start to see the individual fruits, even though they're all blended. These reductions and blendings make it incredibly difficult for a non-native ear to pick out individual words simply because they don't sound like they're separate written forms.
That's a huge challenge, realizing the words themselves are morphing as they connect. I can see how that alone would be disorienting. What else adds to this complexity beyond the physical blending of sounds?
Well, beyond how words physically connect, you've got the incredible diversity of accents and dialects in English. English is a truly global language, and it's definitely not monolithic. You might spend years getting used to one pronunciation, let's say General American.
Like what you typically hear on major U.S. news networks or maybe in Hollywood films.
Exactly. But then maybe you encounter the distinct twang of Southern American English, or the clipped tones of British RP received pronunciation, which, by the way, is often seen as a standard, but is just one specific voice among many within British English alone. Suddenly, everything you thought you knew about pronunciation feels challenged.
It's almost like learning a whole new language within the same language.
Yeah.
Each one demands a fresh adjustment from your ear.
It truly does. Each accent brings its own unique vowel sounds, consonant sounds, its own rhythm and intonation patterns, sometimes even its own regional words. It adds significant layers of complexity to comprehension. It's like imagining learning a piece of music on the piano and then suddenly hearing the same piece played by a full orchestra with completely different instruments and a different tempo. Your brain has to adapt to a whole new sonic landscape. It takes effort and exposure.
That's a vivid way to put it. You could study standard English for years, then tune into a TV show from Scotland or Australia, and it genuinely feels like a whole new puzzle.
And speaking of puzzles, what about those phrases that just don't seem to make any sense if you try to translate them word by word?
Indeed, that brings us right to slang and idioms. These are phrases where the meaning isn't found in the individual words, but in the phrase as a whole. Often it's highly metaphorical, like if someone tells you to spill the beans, they don't actually want you to tip over a can of beans.
Which, while potentially messy, would be a very literal interpretation.
Yeah.
Very. They mean to reveal a secret. I actually had a student once who, bless his heart, when asked to spill the beans, genuinely looked around for some chickpeas.
Oh, no.
It just shows how ingrained these non-literal meanings are for native speakers and how confusing they can be initially. Similarly, kick the bucket has absolutely nothing to do with kicking or buckets.
It means to die, right? I imagine that one in particular could be quite shocking if taken literally.
Exactly. It's a euphemism. These kinds of non-literal expressions can totally throw you for a loop if you interpret them word for word. They're just embedded in everyday conversation, and understanding them requires a bit of a dive into cultural understanding, too.
I can only imagine how frustrating that must be, constantly trying to translate things literally in your head and having it make no sense.
Yeah.
And you mentioned rhythm earlier. How do stress and intonation fit into this complex puzzle? I know English has a certain musicality to it.
Oh, they're absolutely fundamental. They contribute to the musicality of English, you could say. English is what linguists call a stress-timed language. This means native speakers don't give equal weight or time to every single syllable or word, unlike some other languages like, say, Spanish or French, which are often described as more syllable-timed.
So in English, certain words or syllables carry more weight. They stand out more.
Precisely. We emphasize certain syllables within words and certain words within sentences. We use changes in pitch rising and falling tones to convey meaning, emotion, and to highlight what's new or important information. This is the core of stress and intonation. If you're not used to this particular rhythm or beat, it can feel like you're missing the whole melody of the conversation. The emphasis tells you what's important. If it's a question or a statement, maybe even the speaker's mood. For a non-native listener trying to pick up on these subtle changes in pitch and stress while also processing words, reductions, and idioms all at once, that's a real cognitive workout.
It truly is. It's like trying to dance without really hearing the music or feeling the beat properly. So it's not just what they're saying, but profoundly how they're saying it, the music behind the words. And I'm guessing there's probably yet another layer to this, something beyond just the words and sounds themselves.
You're perceptive, yes. There is. The final, often invisible piece of this puzzle is cultural context. Conversations don't happen in a vacuum. They're embedded within a shared cultural understanding that native speakers often just take for granted. This means that things like jokes, specific pop culture references, like mentioning a famous TV show or movie character,
Or a specific historical event that everyone's just assumed to know about. Yeah.
exactly. Shared experiences, even unspoken social rules, these pop up all the time in everyday conversation. For someone from a different cultural background, these elements can be incredibly confusing. They can leave non-natives puzzled, even if they technically understand every single word being spoken.
I can see that. Imagine a native speaker making a casual reference to a classic American sitcom like Seinfeld, or a specific historical event like Watergate. If you're not familiar with that reference, a big part of the conversation's meaning, maybe it's humor or its emotional weight, is just lost on you. It's like you're missing the punchline.
Precisely. It's like arriving late to a play. You hear the lines, but you're missing the backstory and all the inside jokes. So, considering all these pieces, this whole complex tapestry of challenges, what's the ultimate goal here? Where are we trying to get to with all this ear training?
Right. The ultimate goal, yeah, that intuitive understanding.
As we touched on, is really to train your brain to process all these patterns naturally, to get it closer to how a native speaker's brain works, that intuitive understanding. It's not about stressing over every single word. It's about getting your ears truly comfortable with the natural, often rapid flow of English. It's about building a subconscious grasp of how all these elements, the reductions, the rhythm, the context, how they all intertwine, how they sort of dance together, so you can almost predict the next step in the conversation's rhythm, moving beyond that conscious step-by-step translation to just intuitive comprehension.
That makes perfect sense. building comfort and intuition, literally rewiring the brain. Okay, with that foundational understanding of why fast English feels so difficult, let's shift gears. What are the proactive steps? Active listening, you mentioned, is truly the cornerstone of understanding rapid speech. It's so much more than just hearing, isn't it? It's about focused attention, really analyzing and absorbing the sounds. How do we actually start building that ear acuity, laying the foundation for our dance moves?
You're absolutely right. Active listening is fundamentally transformative. It really is the difference between just hearing background noise and truly engaging with what's being said. To build this solid foundation, you need to be strategic both about the audio you choose and how you interact with it. First, and this is critical, start with beginner-friendly audio. It's incredibly tempting for learners to just jump straight into something super complex, like a Quentin Tarantino movie with its overlapping, lightning-fast dialogue, or maybe a dense academic lecture.
I can certainly relate to that desire to jump into the deep end immediately for a challenge. It seems faster.
But that can quickly lead to overwhelm, frustration, and just feeling defeated. Instead, begin with resources specifically designed for learners. These usually offer clear, often slightly slower, but still natural-sounding speech. It's far easier to process initially. Think of it like starting your dance practice with just basic steps and maybe slower music before you try some complex, high-energy routine.
Right, building that initial muscle memory is essential so the later, more complex moves feel more natural.
Exactly. You're building confidence and getting your ear used to the basic patterns.
That's a truly practical and empathetic tip. So what kinds of resources are we talking about here? What are some good starting points that offer clear, authentic English without feeling overwhelming?
Excellent question. There are some great ones out there. For instance, the BBC Learning English has a fantastic podcast called The English We Speak. They expertly break down common phrases and conversational idioms, and they speak at a wonderfully moderate, clear pace. It's authentic, but very accessible.
The BBC is always a reliable source. Solid recommendation.
Then you have sites like ESL Pod. They offer short episodes with really clear explanations of vocabulary and expressions, and they often replay key phrases at different speeds, which is super helpful for targeted learning.
Replaying at different speeds sounds incredibly valuable for grasping those nuances.
It is. And for news, VOA Learning English, that's Voice of America, presents current events but reads slowly and using slightly simplified vocabulary and sentence structures. It lets you follow what's happening in the world while simultaneously building your core listening skills. These are like your foundational dance classes.
Great recommendations for building that initial comfort. Once someone picks one of these beginner-friendly sources, how should they actually use it? Is there a specific, repeatable exercise to get the most out of it?
Absolutely. Strategy is key here. Here's a powerful, practical exercise you can repeat daily. First step. First pass, gist. Pick a short clip, maybe 3 to 5 minutes long from one of these sources. Listen to it once, all the way through. Your only goal this first time is to get the general idea, the gist. Don't stress about catching every word. Just understand the main topic.
Okay, so just aiming for the big picture first without getting bogged down in individual words. Makes sense.
Exactly. This trains your brain to focus on overall meaning, not just individual sounds right away. Second step. Second pass, recognition. Listen again. This time, try to actively identify and maybe jot down 5 to 10 specific words or short phrases that you clearly recognize and understand. This simple act starts training your ear to pick out those little anchor words from the continuous stream of sound. That's a crucial skill for understanding faster speech later.
Right. I can see how that would help you grab onto something familiar in a sea of new sounds.
Third step, third pass, repetition and familiarity. Now, this is where the magic really happens for building ear familiarity and even muscle memory for pronunciation. Play the clip again, but this time pause after each sentence or maybe each short phrase. Listen carefully to that chunk, then repeat it aloud yourself. Try to mimic the pronunciation, the rhythm, the intonation as closely as you possibly can. Don't worry about perfect understanding yet. The goal here is just getting your mouth and ears acquainted with authentic English sounds.
So you're not just listening, you're also actively producing the sounds. That sounds like it would really solidify the neural pathways.
Yeah. Yes, this active repetition solidifies the connection between the sounds you hear and how you actually produce them. And that connection is vital for developing intuitive comprehension down the line.
That's a brilliant way to break it down into manageable steps, engaging both listening and speaking for combined benefit. But what about using subtitles? I know some learners swear by them, but others worry they become a crutch. What's the strategic way to use them in this dance practice?
That's a great question. Subtitles are definitely a double-edged sword if not used carefully. They are incredibly valuable tools, but only if used strategically. Think of them exactly like training wheels for your listening comprehension. They're designed to help you balance initially, but the goal is always to eventually take them off as you gain strength and confidence.
So the idea is to use them as a temporary support, not a permanent fixture. Got it.
Exactly. They bridge that gap between the sounds you hear and the written words, making that connection explicit. The key is not to rely on them indefinitely, but to use them as a temporary support to build your listening muscles. Here's an effective three-step process for using subtitles strategically. Step 1. Match sounds to words, subtitles on. First, watch something short, maybe a YouTube vlog, a scene from a Netflix show you like, with the English subtitles on. Your primary goal here is just to follow along, consciously matching the sounds you're hearing with the words you're seeing on the screen. This visual reinforcement is incredibly powerful for solidifying new vocabulary and seeing exactly how connected speech forms specific written words.
Okay. Actively connecting sound and text. Visually reinforcing the patterns. That makes sense.
Step 2. Test comprehension, subtitles off. Right after you've watched it once with subtitles, turn them off. Immediately rewatch the exact same segment. Now, don't get discouraged if you suddenly miss things. That's totally normal, and it's actually a crucial part of the learning process because your brain is working harder now.
Forcing the brain to rely purely on auditory input. That's where the real strengthening happens, I guess.
Precisely. Your brain is now actively forced to decode the sounds without the visual aid. It has to rely purely on the auditory input. This is where your ear muscles really start to get a workout and strengthen. Step 3. Clarify and learn. Subtitles on again. Finally, rewatch that same segment one more time with the subtitles back on. This is your checking phase. Here, you identify exactly what you missed the second time around, you clarify any misunderstandings, and importantly, you jot down any new words or tricky phrases that flew right past you when the subtitles were off. This cyclical process reinforces learning and helps you pinpoint your specific listening blind spots.
That makes so much sense. It's a structured cycle. Learn with support, test without, then review and refine. It's about phasing them out over time, not just having them on constantly, like learning to ride that bike.
Yeah.
I've also heard about a specific tech tool for Netflix users that can make this subtitle process even smoother.
Ah, yes, you're probably thinking of a fantastic pro tip for anyone using Netflix. The language learning with Netflix Chrome extension. Have you heard of it?
I think I have. Sounds familiar. What does it do exactly?
It's honestly a game changer for language learners using Netflix. It lets you do a couple of really helpful things. First, you can easily slow down the dialogue if it's just a bit too fast, maybe to 0.8x or 0.9x speed, without making the voices sound weirdly distorted.
That's handy, preventing that robotic sound you sometimes get.
Very. And second, it offers dual language subtitles simultaneously, so you can see the English subtitles and subtitles in your native language side by side right on the screen. This is incredibly useful for making direct comparisons and understanding tricky translations in real time. It essentially turns your regular Netflix binge into a dedicated language lab session.
That's brilliant for leveraging entertainment time. Okay, moving on slightly. When you're just starting out with this active listening, are all kinds of audio equally good? Or should learners maybe try to stick to specific types of audio sources initially? I'm thinking about, say, a group chat versus just one person speaking. Is there a difference?
That's a very insightful question. And yes, the type of audio matters quite a bit, especially at the beginning when you're building those foundational listening skills. It's almost always best to focus on single speaker audio first. Group conversations, like you mentioned, or even interviews with lots of back and forth are notoriously difficult.
Why is that? Is it just too much happening at once for the brain to process effectively?
Exactly. Voices can overlap. You might have several different accents present simultaneously. The pace can fluctuate wildly and unpredictably. Starting with one clear, consistent voice allows your brain to just focus on the pronunciation, the intonation, the rhythm of that one speaker. It removes the extra cognitive load of trying to manage multiple voices, speeds, and accents all at the same time, like learning to dance with one steady partner before trying a complex group choreography.
That analogy holds true again. Focusing on one consistent rhythm makes sense before tackling multiple unpredictable ones.
Yeah, that's exactly it. Think about sources like TED Talks. Many speakers, people like Malala Yousafzai, Simon Sinek, Brené Brown, have incredibly clear, engaging, and articulate speaking styles. Their talks are excellent for focused listening practice.
TED Talks are great for clarity, I agree.
Yeah.
Very focused.
Or consider audiobooks narrated by a single person. Something like Harry Potter read by Jim Dale, or really any well-narrated audiobook from Audible or maybe LibriVox. They offer a consistent voice and pacing over a much longer duration, which lets you really settle into one speaker's rhythm and style.
A consistent voice for a long stretch seems ideal for sustained practice. What about podcasts? Any specific types?
For podcasts, look for shows like This American Life or How I Built This. They often feature one main narrator or host guiding the story, or they have clear interviews where typically only one person speaks at a time. This makes them very accessible and less overwhelming than, say, a chaotic roundtable discussion.
Okay, focusing on one voice to start, getting comfortable with its patterns makes complete sense. So once you've picked a good single speaker source, is there a specific way to practice with it that really forces deeper comprehension beyond just passive listening?
Absolutely. We want active engagement, not just passive listening here. Here's another powerful, practical exercise. Select a 5-minute segment from, say, a TED Talk or an audiobook chapter. Listen to it, but here's the key. Pause the audio roughly every 30 seconds, or maybe after each main idea. Then take a moment to summarize what you just heard in your own words, out loud, or just mentally. You can do it mentally, but for even better retention and processing, I highly recommend jotting it down quickly in a notebook. This isn't about writing down every single detail. It's about capturing the core message, the key points, the essence of what was just said. This practice forces your brain to process meaning in real time, to actively extract the gist, and to hold on to information rather than just letting the words wash over you passively.
So it's essentially checking for understanding as you go, forcing your brain to synthesize information on the fly. That's smart.
Exactly. It's a fantastic way to develop active comprehension and retention skills, which are absolutely crucial for keeping up when speech gets faster. And if you find yourself struggling to summarize a particular 30-second chunk, just rewind a few seconds and listen to that specific part again until you can articulate the main idea. It's built-in error correction.
That's a super effective way to force active comprehension, not just passive hearing, building that mental muscle.
Yeah.
Okay, now here's where it gets really interesting, I think. This is the part where many learners feel the most frustration. Once you've laid that foundation with active listening and easier materials, how do we tackle the very heart of fast English? How words flow together seamlessly, how they dance together, as you put it. This connected speech you mentioned earlier where words blend, sounds drop, and sentences just seem to flow together like a river. How do we learn to see the individual steps within that blur?
This is truly the core challenge, and also where understanding the underlying patterns becomes incredibly empowering for learners. We're talking about consciously understanding how those words blend, drop, and flow together so that the blur starts to resolve into distinct, recognizable movements or patterns. First, you absolutely need to proactively learn the common reductions. As we discussed, these are the phonetic shortcuts native speakers use constantly, mostly for efficiency. Knowing them explicitly will dramatically improve your recognition skills. Think about going to becoming gonna want to, transforming into wanna, have to, reducing to hafta. What are you often becoming whatcha?
Right.
I don't know, sounding like no. Could have often becoming coulda, should have, shoulda, woulda.
There is a surprising number of these contractions and reductions once you start noticing them. Seems like dozens.
Hundreds. These are just a few very prominent examples. You also get common vowel reductions, like the A in about, often becoming that weak sound, the schwa. And consonant clusters often simplify, like the CT in exactly can sometimes just sound like exactly.
So it's about building a specific vocabulary of sounds, recognizing these new forms like gonna as legitimate units, not just trying to hear the original going to. That sounds like a fundamental shift in perception.
Precisely. You need to train your ear to accept gona as its own valid sound pattern representing going to. A fantastic practical exercise for this is to create a flashcard deck. Start with maybe 20 or 30 common reductions. You can easily find lists online, just search for common English reductions or check ESL resource sites. On one side, write the full formal phrase, for example, going to. On the other, write the reduced form, e.g. gonna.
Yeah.
Then practice saying them out loud. Consciously form the reduced sounds, get comfortable articulating both the full and the reduced versions fluidly.
So you're practicing both recognition and production, which makes sense for solidifying the pattern in your brain.
Yes, that helps internalize the sound. Then take it a step further. Actively listen for them. Put on short clips from popular conversational TV shows like Friends, The Office. Maybe YouTube blogs are great for this too because they're unscripted. Challenge yourself. Actively count how many times you hear those specific reductions in a 5-minute segment. Keep a little tally.
Like a scavenger hunt for sounds. That really bridges the gap between theoretical knowledge and real-world application. I like that.
Exactly. It bridges the gap between knowing about reductions theoretically and actually spotting them in the wild in authentic contexts. You'll probably be surprised how many you hear once you start listening for them specifically.
That's an excellent way to make it active, almost like a game. Okay, moving beyond just recognizing individual reductions, how do you get your mouth and your ears in sync with the overall rhythm, the intonation, the flow of fast English? How do you really learn to dance with the speaker?
That's precisely where the technique of practicing shadowing comes in. It's incredibly powerful. Shadowing means you mimic a speaker in real time. You're copying not just their words, but crucially their speed, their intonation, their rhythm. It's genuinely like shadowing a professional dancer to learn their moves. You're emulating their exact performance, step for step, beat for beat. This builds both auditory processing skills and motor memory for speech production.
Okay, shadowing. How does that work in practice? What's the process here? Walk us through it.
Here's a detailed process you can follow. Step 1, select a short clip. Choose a short audio clip, maybe 1 to 2 minutes long. It could be from a podcast, a show, a news broadcast, anything with a clear speaker. Step 2, first pass. Listen for gist. Just listen to the clip once all the way through to get the general idea of what it's about. Step 3, second pass. Mimic the musicality. Now play the clip again. This time, immediately, almost simultaneously, start repeating what you hear. Try to stay just a fraction of a second behind the speaker. Repeat as closely as possible. Don't worry too much if you don't understand every single word at first. The main goal here is to replicate the sounds, the pace, the melodic contours, the up-downs of the speech. Try to match the speaker's pitch and rhythm exactly.
So you're speaking almost at the same time as them, creating that immediate echo. That sounds tricky.
Yes, very close behind them. It'll feel awkward or clunky at first. That's totally normal. You're building new muscle memory in your mouth and pathways in your brain. Step 4, gradual progression. It's wise to start with slower, clearer speakers. News anchors or audiobook narrators often have very consistent pronunciation and pacing. As you get more comfortable, gradually work your way up to faster speakers, maybe comedians, talk show hosts, or characters in a fast-paced TV drama. Step 5, troubleshooting. If you find yourself constantly trailing too far behind or getting lost, try using an even shorter clip, maybe just 30 seconds, or use one of those tools we mentioned to slow the audio down just slightly, maybe to 0.9x speed. The key is consistent, focused mimicry. It forces your mouth and ears to connect in a way that passive listening or even just reading aloud never will.
So it's less about immediate conscious understanding and more about building that physical muscle memory for the sounds and rhythm initially, building that deep neurological connection. That sounds a bit counterintuitive for learners who just want to understand everything right away.
Yeah.
How does that really help comprehension in the end?
Hi, it's a fantastic question, and yeah, it can feel counterintuitive. It's a common misconception about shadowing. It's not about being a mindless parrot forever, but for that initial phase of building fluency and processing speed, yes, you are focusing heavily on muscle memory and sound replication. Think about how a baby learns to speak. They mimic sounds and babble long before they grasp complex grammar or meaning. We're tapping into that same primal learning mechanism. More specifically, shadowing trains your auditory motor feedback loop. This means your brain becomes much more efficient at predicting incoming sounds because it's practiced generating them. You're essentially teaching your brain to recognize patterns by actively producing them. The comprehension catches up because your processing becomes more automatic for the sounds and rhythms you physically practiced. And yes, there are excellent resources out there. Apps like SpeechLink or Glossica that are specifically designed for this. They provide structured shadowing exercises with native audio, often with feedback, which can be incredibly helpful for fine-tuning your mimicry and rhythm.
That's a really compelling explanation for how mimicry aids comprehension. It's about the brain anticipating sounds it knows how to make. Okay, but what about those super fast sentences, the ones that just feel like an undecipherable blur, like a line of dancers moving way too quickly to see their individual steps? How do you even begin to untangle those?
Right, those moments where it just sounds like one long string of noise. When fast sentences feel like that, like an indistinguishable blur, the most effective strategy is to consciously break down the sentences into smaller, more manageable chunks. This makes the daunting task of deciphering rapid speech much more accessible. It allows your brain to process bite-sized pieces rather than being overwhelmed by a whole torrent of sound at once. Let's take that example we used earlier. What are you doing this weekend? When spoken quickly.
Yeah.
It can sound like, what you doing this weekend?
Yes. It can sound like one long, unintelligible word to an untrained ear. I've definitely experienced that feeling.
But if you intentionally try to break it down, you can start to identify the underlying chunks. What are you doing this weekend? Each of these is a distinct semantic unit, a meaningful piece, even if the sounds are blending heavily together through connected speech.
So it's about training your ear to hear those smaller sound units or chunks, even when they're all squashed together. How do you practice this deconstruction, this sort of linguistic reverse engineering?
A highly effective practical exercise for this involves using really fast audio, like maybe from a movie trailer or rapid-fire interview segment. These are often packed with dense, quick dialogue. Step 1. Listen and attempt. Listen to the full fast sentence several times. First, just try to get the general idea, if possible. Step 2. Chunk it out. Then play the sentence again, but this time pause frequently, maybe after every beat or couple of words. Try to write the sentence down, but explicitly separate it into the individual chunks you think you hear. You might be guessing the exact words initially. That's okay. Focus on where the pauses seem to fall, the intonation shifts, the moments where one thought or phrase seems to end and another begins.
Okay, like finding the natural breaks in the flow of speech, even if they're really subtle.
Exactly. Step 3. Repeat chunks. Once you have your best guess at the chunks written down, repeat each chunk aloud, focusing on its distinct sound and how it contributes to the overall meaning. Step 4. Reassemble and flow. Finally, put the chunks back together. Practice saying the full sentence at speed, trying to emulate the original pace and flow you heard in the trailer or interview. This systematic process helps your brain map that auditory blur back to its component parts. It also helps you optimize your working memory to process speech in larger, more semantically meaningful units, mirroring how native brains parse rapid dialogue. It makes it significantly easier to recognize those same chunks when they fly by in real time in future conversations.
That makes incredible sense. It's like breaking down a complex dance move into its component steps, practicing each one, then smoothly reassembling them into the full move.
Precisely, like learning choreography.
That's incredibly helpful. It feels like you're deciphering a linguistic code when you do that. Okay, so once you're starting to get a handle on these micro skills, this detailed footwork, the reductions, the shadowing, the chunking, what's the next big step? I'm thinking about something that just naturally pulls you into the language, makes the whole dance feel more intuitive over time.
You're leading right into what I often call the secret sauce of really effective ear training, immersing yourself in English. The more you consistently surround yourself with the language in natural context, the more your brain just naturally adapts to its rhythms, its sounds, its patterns. It's very much like moving to a new city. The more time you spend exploring, walking around, listening to people, the more you learn to navigate it intuitively. You start picking up on local customs and shortcuts without even consciously trying. And the great part is, you don't necessarily have to move to an English-speaking country to do it effectively.
That's reassuring for many listeners, I'm sure. Immersion can be incredibly fun, and you can do it effectively from anywhere in the world thanks to technology. What's a good starting point for this kind of immersion?
One of the most effective and, frankly, enjoyable ways to immerse yourself is simply by watching movies and TV shows in English. These expose you to natural, often rapid dialogue in a context that's usually highly entertaining and engaging. You get authentic conversations, current slang, a huge diversity of accents, cultural nuances. It's all rolled into one dynamic package. For instance, comedies like Brooklyn 99 or The Office are fantastic for picking up casual banter, everyday slang, and just understanding natural social interactions. The dialogue is very character-driven, often witty and fast-paced.
Those are absolute classics. They really do capture that everyday conversational feel. What about other genres or types of shows? Maybe someone prefers drama or wants to specifically hear different accents.
Great question. There's something for everyone. If you're interested in hearing British accents and maybe more formal yet still natural-sounding English, dramas like The Crown offer excellent exposure. You get that received pronunciation and more nuanced, carefully crafted dialogue.
The Crown for a more formal British sound, certainly.
Yeah, or for intense, fast-paced American English with really compelling plot lines, something like Breaking Bad provides a masterclass in rapid, very nuanced dialogue and intense character interactions. You really have to listen closely there.
Definitely intense and often with very layered, complex dialogue.
And for lively, spontaneous conversation, unscripted banter, talk shows like The Tonight Show with Jimmy Fallon or maybe The Daily Show are excellent. They feature real people engaging in often witty, quick-paced exchanges. You hear interruptions, laughter, real reactions. It's very dynamic.
A good variety there, from structured drama to spontaneous conversation. So beyond just passively watching and enjoying these shows, what's the best way to actively leverage them for ear training? How do we turn entertainment time into powerful learning time?
Right. Active viewing is key here. Here's a powerful practical exercise you can do. Step 1. Active viewing with subtitles. Watch maybe a 10-minute scene from one of these shows with the English subtitles on initially. But don't just passively read along. Actively look for and identify maybe 5 phrases or expressions that you didn't understand immediately or that just caught your ear as sounding interesting or confusing. These could be idioms, slang terms, common phrasal verbs, anything unfamiliar.
Okay, so a targeted hunt for unknown phrases or tricky bits. Got it.
Step 2. Research and internalize. Pause the show, look up the meanings of those 5 phrases using an online dictionary, maybe Urban Dictionary for slang or just a quick search. Pay attention to how they were used in the specific context of the scene. Then challenge yourself. Try to use each of those 5 new phrases in your own original sentences. Say them out loud or write them down. This active engagement helps internalize the new vocabulary and trains your brain to recognize them later, making them your own.
That's how new vocabulary really sticks, by actively engaging with it and using it yourself.
Step 3. Test your ear without subtitles. Finally, go back and rewatch the exact same 10-minute scene, but this time without any subtitles. Really test your ear. You'll likely be amazed at how much more you pick up and how much more natural those previously confusing phrases now sound, simply because you've actively engaged with them. It shifts from just watching to actively training.
That's a really structured way to turn passive entertainment into highly effective active learning. I appreciate that cyclical approach.
Okay.
Beyond visual media like TV and movies, what other forms of audio immersion are particularly useful, especially for people who are often on the go?
Listening to podcasts is another brilliant strategy. They're incredibly versatile and absolutely perfect for on-the-go listening. You can listen during your commute, while exercising, doing chores, cooking, just relaxing at any time, anywhere. And they offer a huge, almost overwhelming variety of topics, formats, and speaking styles. You can find everything from very casual, rambling conversations to highly formal academic discussions. It's a rich tapestry of authentic English.
So much choice there. Any specific recommendations for variety in podcast listening, different styles?
Sure. For example, something like the Joe Rogan Experience features very casual, often extremely fast-paced conversations. You'll hear a lot of slang, humor, natural hesitations, people interrupting. It's excellent for exposure to authentic, unscripted, rapid dialogue, showing you how native speakers truly interact informally.
A very natural, though perhaps initially challenging, listening experience. Good for the deep end.
Can be. For clear but still very natural-sounding news speech, NPR's Up First is a fantastic choice. They deliver daily news concisely and articulately. It's professional but not stilted.
Good for current events and clear delivery. Reliable.
And for engaging storytelling mixed with conversational banter, podcasts like My Favorite Murder or the classic This American Life can expose you to different facets of natural English. They often blend narration with interviews or conversations, giving you different textures of speech.
That's a broad range of options. How can someone really maximize their learning from podcasts? Is it just a matter of hitting play and hoping for the best, or is there a more deliberate approach to recommend?
Definitely a more deliberate approach yields better results. Passive listening helps, but active listening is better. Here's a powerful practical exercise for podcasts. Listen to maybe a 10-minute segment of a podcast that genuinely interests you. Topic matters for engagement. During that segment, try pausing every 2 to 3 minutes. Take a moment to quickly summarize the main points you've just heard. Jot them down in a notebook or a note app. Again, don't worry about writing down every single detail. It's about grasping the core message, identifying the key arguments, or understanding the main events being discussed.
So summarizing as you go, forcing your brain to actively process and retain the main ideas, like we discussed earlier with shorter audio.
Exactly. This practice builds your ability to follow longer stretches of audio content and actively extract the crucial information. That's a vital skill for understanding extended conversations, attending lectures, or participating in meetings. If you can summarize it accurately, you've truly processed it.
That's a solid strategy for forcing deeper comprehension and retention, making your brain actively engage. But True immersion isn't just about consuming media passively, is it? What about real live interaction, actually putting yourself on the dance floor, so to speak, getting out there?
You're absolutely right. That's the next level. The ultimate form of immersion really involves joining English-speaking communities and participating. Online spaces in particular offer incredible accessible opportunities to hear real people talking in real time in totally unscripted, natural ways. This is where you encounter the full, messy, wonderful spectrum of accents, speaking speeds, fillers, hesitations, and linguistic quirks that you don't always get in carefully produced learning materials. You hear authentic pauses, and the natural ebb and flow of thought.
Where can people find these communities online? Any suggestions?
Platforms like Discord are fantastic. You can find language learning servers specifically dedicated to English practice where everyone is trying to improve and help each other. Or you could even join fandom groups for topics you're genuinely passionate about: gaming, movies, books, hobbies. In those spaces, you'll encounter casual, uninhibited conversation among native speakers about something you already care about.
That's a great tip to find communities based on your interests, making the learning feel less like work and more like fun.
Yeah. Reddit also has relevant communities like the subreddits English Learning or maybe Raskin American or Ras UK, where you can see active written discussions using natural language and idioms. Reading helps too. And for truly unfiltered, spontaneous spoken English, watching English-speaking streamers on Twitch can be incredibly insightful. Their communication is often very conversational, reactive, dynamic, and full of casual language.
So it's about finding these spaces where English is the natural flowing mode of communication, not just a structured classroom exercise. How can a listener make the most of those interactions without feeling completely overwhelmed, especially if they're maybe a bit shy about speaking up initially?
That's a very real concern. It can be intimidating. Here's a practical exercise designed for low pressure. Spend about 15 minutes just lurking, just listening, in a Discord voice chat. You don't have to say anything yet. Or actively watch a Twitch stream for that amount of time. Your goal initially is purely to listen and observe. As you listen, try to actively note down maybe 3 to 5 slang terms, idioms, or common reductions that you hear being used. After your listening session, take a few minutes to research the meanings of those terms and how they were used. This targeted approach helps you build your recognition of natural, informal language that you might not find in textbooks. It turns a potentially overwhelming experience into a focused, low-pressure learning opportunity.
Like gathering intel before jumping into the conversation. That's a clever way to stay engaged and learn from authentic interactions without the immediate pressure of having to speak. Smart. Now, you mentioned earlier that our brains are incredibly wired to recognize patterns, and English speech, you said, is absolutely brimming with them, those recurring steps in the dance. How do we specifically train our brains to spot and interpret these crucial speech patterns, moving beyond just individual words or reductions? How do we get the bigger picture?
That's an excellent next step, really moving into deeper, more holistic comprehension. Our brains are phenomenal pattern recognition machines. Consciously tuning into these larger patterns in English speech will unlock a deeper, almost predictive level of understanding. One of the most vital patterns to master, as we touched upon, is stress and rhythm. As we discussed, English is stress-timed, not syllable-timed. Certain syllables within words and certain words within sentences get more prominence. They're spoken louder, held a bit longer, or have a higher pitch. Understanding this underlying rhythm is crucial because it helps you identify the most important information in a sentence almost instantly. Remember the example, I'm going to the store. The stress syllables are on go and store. These are the words carrying the key information, the rhythmic beats you absolutely need to catch.
Right. The content words usually carry the stress, giving you immediate clues about the core message. They pop out.
Often, yes. If you miss the stress pattern, you might misunderstand the focus or miss the core meaning entirely. It's like listening to music but missing the main beat or the bass line.
So it's like learning the unique musical beat of the language itself. How do you actively practice internalizing that rhythm and anticipating those stressed words or syllables?
Here's a great practical exercise that engages both your ears and even your body a little bit. Listen to a single sentence from a podcast, a TED Talk, or maybe a news report. Play it a couple of times. As you listen, try to identify the syllables that receive the main stress. Then literally clap your hands, tap your foot, or nod your head on those stress beats. As you listen again, feel the rhythm physically.
Get physical with it. That sounds like a fun kinesthetic way to internalize the rhythm. Connects differently.
Then try repeating the sentence yourself, aiming to replicate that exact rhythm and stress pattern you just identified. You can even record yourself saying it and compare it to the original audio. This helps you fine-tune your pronunciation and rhythmic accuracy. This active engagement with the rhythm helps your brain anticipate and process the flow of rapid speech much more effectively. You start moving beyond individual words to hear the flow of ideas.
That sounds like a genuinely engaging way to learn, really connecting the body to the language's rhythm. What other common patterns should learners be consciously focusing on to unlock that deeper understanding of fast speech?
Another absolutely pervasive pattern, and one that often trips up learners significantly, is the incredibly frequent use of phrasal verbs and idioms. These are just everywhere in fast, natural, informal speech. And their meanings, as we know, are almost always non-literal. They function as single units of meaning. Phrasal verbs, for instance, combine a basic verb with a preposition or an adverb, or sometimes both, to create a completely new meaning, like pick up.
A classic example with so many different meanings depending on context. It's wild.
Totally. Pick up can mean to lift something, to learn something new informally. I picked up some Spanish. To collect someone. Pick me up at 8. To improve. Business is picking up. So many meanings from two simple words. Or run out, meaning to exhaust a supply. We ran out of milk. Idioms too, like hit the nail on the head, meaning to be exactly right. Or cost an arm and a leg, meaning to be very expensive. You absolutely need to train your ear to recognize these phrases as single, distinct concepts, not as individual words to be translated literally one by one. They're like set dance moves. You just need to know what the whole move means.
They can be incredibly tricky because the meaning is so detached from the literal words. It's almost like a secret code sometimes. How can someone get better at recognizing them quickly when they just fly by in fast speech?
A strategic approach is definitely needed. You have to actively build your knowledge base of the most common ones. Find reliable lists, maybe the 50 or 100 most common phrasal verbs and idioms. Resources like English Club, Fluent Moo, or specific ESL vocabulary books often have these. Then create flashcards. Again, on one side, write the phrase, for example, spill the beans. On the other side, write its meaning, reveal a secret, and maybe a short example sentence showing its typical usage.
So active memorization is the first step, getting them in your head.
Yes, quiz yourself daily to get them into your memory. But, and this is crucial, don't stop there. The next step is recognition in context. Actively listen for these specific phrases when you're consuming English audio, your TV shows, podcasts, movies. When you hear one, like spill the beans, pause the audio, mentally or literally if needed, and confirm its meaning in that context. The goal is that when you hear a phrasal verb or idiom, your brain immediately accesses the correct non-literal meaning automatically, rather than getting stuck trying to translate each word literally or parse the grammar. This builds that automatic recognition, which is critical for keeping up with fast speech.
That's a great tip for building automaticity, making those complex phrases just click without conscious effort. Okay, there's one final technique we can talk about that really sharpens the ability to catch individual words within that rapid stream of speech, almost like slowing down a fast motion video to see every single detail.
For that level of detail, the gold standard exercise is practicing dictation. Dictation is an incredibly effective, though admittedly sometimes challenging, exercise. It really sharpens your auditory discrimination, your ability to distinguish between similar sounds, and your attention to detail. It forces you to listen extremely carefully to every single sound and word, pushing your ear to clarify exactly what it's hearing word by word.
Okay, dictation. How does that work precisely? What's the process?
Here's the process. Step 1. Select a short clip. Pick a very short audio clip, maybe just 30 seconds long to start. You can use dedicated resources like LinkU, which often have built-in dictation exercises with transcripts ready for checking, or you can simply use a short segment from any YouTube video, news report, or podcast where you know a transcript or accurate subtitles are available for comparison later.
So you'll need the answer key, basically, to verify your accuracy.
Right. Exactly. You need the correct text to check against. Step 2. Listen and write. Play the clip, maybe sentence by sentence or even phrase by phrase. Try to write down every single word you hear. Do not be afraid to pause and rewind as many times as you need to. The goal here isn't speed, it's accuracy. You're training your ear to capture every little detail. Step 3. Compare and learn. Once you've written down what you think you heard, carefully compare your transcription line by line against the original script or subtitles. Circle or highlight every single word you missed, misspelled, or misunderstood. This direct comparison provides immediate, specific feedback and precisely highlights your personal listening blind spots, the sounds or words that consistently trip you up.
That sounds like it would really show you exactly where your ear might be making assumptions or missing sounds, almost like a diagnostic tool. Any pro tips for someone starting with dictation? It sounds like it could be quite challenging initially.
Yes, it definitely can be. A crucial pro tip is to start slow and build up. Do not immediately jump into trying to dictate a rapid fire movie trailer if you're finding it really hard. That's just setting yourself up for frustration. Begin with slower, clearer audio, maybe those VOA Learning English news clips we mentioned earlier. Get comfortable with that pace first. Then gradually move to more natural, moderately paced conversations. And eventually, once you're feeling more confident, then you can challenge yourself with those faster clips like movie trailers or spontaneous interviews. This progressive approach builds your confidence and your ear's accuracy over time. It makes the process less frustrating and much more rewarding. Remember, it's all about consistent effort and gradual improvement, not instant perfection.
That makes total sense. Start easy, build confidence, then increase the challenge. Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground. Active listening, connected speech, immersion, patterns, dictation. What does all this mean for actual real-world application? The ultimate test of your ear training surely have to be engaging with native speakers directly, stepping onto that dance floor with a real live partner. How do we effectively bridge the gap from these structured practice exercises to actual dynamic, unpredictable conversations?
You're absolutely right. Real conversations are the ultimate test and also a vital component of the training itself. They're not just the final exam, they're part of the ongoing learning process. It's one thing to understand a podcast you can pause, rewind, maybe look up words from. It's another thing entirely to keep up with the dynamic, unscripted, real-time flow of a live chat, where your conversation partner probably won't slow down just for you unless you ask them to. So how do we get that practice? One of the most accessible and effective ways nowadays is by finding language partners online. There are fantastic apps designed specifically for this purpose. Platforms like Tandem, HelloTalk, or italki are very popular. These platforms connect language learners like yourself with native speakers who are often looking to practice your native language or are just happy to help someone learn theirs.
It's often a language exchange, right? Like a pen pal, but for speaking. That sounds
Mhm.
incredibly useful for accessible practice.
Exactly. When you're just starting out with live conversations, I strongly recommend beginning with short chats. Maybe aim for just 10 or 15 minutes initially. This helps you build confidence and get a feel for the rhythm and unpredictability of live interaction without the pressure of having to sustain a really long conversation right away.
It's like a quick practice dance to warm up. That sounds like a great low-pressure way to dip your toes in. Is there a specific way to use these chats to really target your training for fast speech beyond just having a general conversation?
Indeed, you can be strategic even in conversation. During a chat, don't be afraid to make your learning goals explicit with your partner, assuming they're open to it. For instance, you could politely ask them, hey, would you mind consciously trying to use the reduction gonna a few times in the next couple of minutes? I'm really trying to train my ear for it.
That's an interesting idea, asking them to use specific features you're focused on, really targeted practice.
Or maybe ask them to use a specific idiom you've been studying. Then, as they speak, actively listen for that specific sound or phrase. After they say a sentence containing it, you could even repeat their sentence back to them, focusing on replicating that reduction or phrase accurately. This direct targeted practice in a real conversation helps solidify your recognition and production of those specific fast speech patterns under real conversational pressure. It's like practicing one specific dance step repeatedly with your partner until you both nail it.
That's brilliant. Turning the conversation itself into a focused learning exercise with your partner's help. What if someone prefers more of a group setting, or they want to get exposed to a wider variety of speech styles all in one go?
For those who thrive in a more social environment or want that broader exposure, joining conversation groups is highly beneficial. You can often find local meetups check sites like meetup.com or online groups hosted by language schools, community centers, or just informal online communities. The significant advantage of these groups is exactly what you said. They expose you to multiple accents and speaking styles all at once in the same session. You'll hear different paces, different intonations, different vocabulary choices, maybe different levels of formality, and even different conversational habits like interrupting from various speakers in the group.
Like joining a big dance class with lots of different partners, each with their own unique style. Yeah. That sounds like a challenging but rewarding experience for sure.
Exactly. It's great exposure, rich input.
But that also sounds like it could be a lot to process at once. How do you prevent yourself from getting completely overwhelmed in a group setting with so much input flying around?
That's a very valid concern. It's easy to feel lost in a cacophony of voices, especially at first. Here's a practical exercise or strategy for managing group settings. For the first 10 or 15 minutes of the session, maybe pick just one person in the group to focus on. Instead of trying to track every single speaker and follow every single conversation thread simultaneously, just concentrate your listening efforts solely on understanding that one individual. Pay attention to their specific speech patterns. Do they frequently use certain reductions you've learned? Do they speak particularly fast or slowly? What are their common filler words or phrases? Then maybe later you can mentally practice mimicking their patterns or just make a note of their specific pronunciations. This targeted focus allows you to extract concrete, manageable learning points from a potentially complex environment without feeling completely swamped.
Like zooming in on one dancer's moves before trying to watch the whole troupe. That's a smart way to manage the input and make it actionable. Okay, one final crucial point about real conversations. What if you're in the middle of talking to someone, maybe a native speaker, and you just get lost? You genuinely don't understand something they said quickly. Is it okay to ask for clarification, or should you just kind of nod along and hope you catch up? That's always a worry.
Oh, absolutely. You should ask. In fact, you should actively ask for feedback and clarification. Please don't be shy about politely interrupting to clarify something you didn't catch. Native speakers are generally very understanding. Often they're impressed by your effort to communicate and learn, and they're usually more than happy to help you out.
So it's not rude to interrupt politely.
Hmm.
That's good to know, as that's a common fear for learners, feeling like they're being disruptive.
Not usually, especially if you frame it politely. You can say something simple like, "Excuse me, I just missed that last part. Could you say it again?" Or, "Sorry, what does that mean exactly?" Or even, "Could you rephrase that? I'm still getting my ear used to faster English." Huh. This not only helps you understand the immediate point of confusion, but it also reinforces your learning of specific reductions, idioms, or speech patterns right there in context. It shifts the dynamic instantly.
How does it shift it? Sounds like it could change the entire interaction's feel.
It shifts you from feeling lost, passive, and maybe a bit embarrassed to being an active learner, taking control and participating directly in improving your own understanding. It's empowering.
That is empowering indeed. It changes the whole feeling of the interaction from passive to active.
It really does. And here's a quick practical exercise to reinforce this habit and track your learning from conversations. After each conversation you have, whether it's a one-on-one chat or a group session, take just a few minutes afterward to reflect. Write down maybe 3 new insights you gained specifically about fast speech during that interaction. This could be a new slang phrase you learned, an accent quirk you noticed from a specific speaker, a reduction you finally understood clearly in context, or maybe even a pattern of intonation that suddenly became clear to you. Review these insights briefly before your next conversation. This reflection solidifies your learning, reinforces what you're actively working on, and provides tangible evidence of your ongoing progress, which is a powerful motivator in itself.
This all sounds so much more achievable when broken down like this, especially with the help of today's technology. You mentioned a few tools earlier, like the Netflix extension. How can we really leverage technology more broadly to make this whole ear training process even easier, more efficient, and maybe, dare I say, even more fun?
Technology is truly a fantastic ally in language learning these days. It provides accessibility, flexibility, and types of personalized feedback that just weren't possible with traditional methods alone. It's like having a personal dance coach, a patient practice partner, and a slow-motion replay button, all available 24/7 right at your fingertips. One incredibly simple yet remarkably powerful technological tool is the ability to slow down audio playback speed. Most modern media players, like VLC Media Player, which is free, many streaming services like YouTube or Netflix via those extensions that we talked about, and even free audio editing software like Audacity allow you to adjust the playback speed easily without making everyone sound like they're talking through molasses.
Right, you don't want to distort the sound too much, so finding that sweet spot for speed is key. Not too slow, not too fast.
I highly recommend experimenting with slowing the audio to just around 0.8x or maybe 0.9x speed initially. This relatively minor reduction in speed can make a huge difference in your ability to catch individual words, subtle sounds, and those tricky connected speech nuances, all without distorting the pitch so much that the voice sounds unnatural or robotic. It just gives your brain that crucial extra fraction of a second it needs to process the rapid sounds, making fast speech feel much more manageable, especially at the start.
That's a great immediate fix for when something feels just a touch too fast to grasp. How can you kind of quantify the benefit of slowing it down to really see the difference it makes for your comprehension?
Good question. Here's a practical exercise to demonstrate the effect. Take a 1-minute audio clip that you're currently finding challenging, maybe from a fast-paced show, a news report, or an interview. First, listen to it carefully at 0.8x speed. Really focus on understanding as much as you can at that slower pace. Then, immediately after, listen to the exact same 1-minute clip again, but this time at its normal 1.0x speed. After both listens, try to quickly summarize the main points or jot down the key phrases you understood. Pay close attention to how many more words or specific phrases you managed to catch the second time at normal speed after your brain had already had that warm-up exposure at the slower pace.
Ah, so the slower pass primes the brain, almost like a pre-read for your ears. Interesting.
Precisely. Your brain will have already processed some of the sounds, maybe anticipated the rhythm and structure a bit. You'll likely be surprised by the immediate improvement in comprehension at normal speed.
That's a clear way to see immediate progress and build confidence. What about tools that can help with transcription? You mentioned dictation, but are there tools that can sort of do the transcription for you to help check your understanding?
Yes, absolutely. That brings us to the growing field of speech-to-text tools. Apps and services like Google Translate's real-time transcription feature on the mobile app, dedicated transcription services like Otter.ai, or even the built-in live captioning features available on many video platforms like YouTube or Zoom can automatically transcribe spoken English into written text in real time or from recordings. These are incredibly useful for quickly checking your understanding of fast or unclear audio.
How would you use them most effectively for learning, not just for convenience?
If you're listening to something quickly, a podcast segment, a lecture clip, and you're just not quite sure what a particular tricky phrase was, you can play that segment back through a speech-to-text tool. It will provide you with the written text instantly, revealing the missing words or clarifying the pronunciation. It's like having a personal transcriber on call to verify what your ears might be missing.
So it's like having an instant answer key to compare against what you thought you heard. That sounds incredibly useful for pinpointing exactly what you're missing.
Exactly. Here's a practical exercise using these tools. Play a challenging segment of a podcast or a video through a tool like Otter.ai or use live captions. Then meticulously compare the automated transcription it produces to what you actually heard or what you thought you heard. Highlight every word or phrase that you missed entirely, misinterpreted, or that simply sounded very different in speech compared to its written form, especially those reductions. This direct side-by-side comparison provides immediate, precise feedback on your specific listening challenges. It's like getting immediate pinpoint feedback on your dance steps, showing you exactly where you stumbled or missed a beat.
That sounds like it would quickly identify specific trouble spots and help you focus your practice. Okay, what about dedicated language learning apps? Things like Duolingo, Babbel, Pimsleur. Are they actually useful for this kind of advanced ear training for speed, or are they more just for basic vocabulary and grammar?
No, they are absolutely useful, and many have evolved significantly to incorporate more sophisticated listening practice. Established language apps, like the ones you mentioned, and others have integrated extensive listening exercises directly into their curricula. These apps often feature progressively challenging listening tasks. The audio might gradually increase in speed, or the sentence structures become more complex as you advance through the levels. They provide a very structured, often gamified way to practice listening comprehension. You usually get clear pronunciation models to listen to and immediate feedback on whether your answers were correct.
How can someone best use these apps, specifically for targeted ear training for fast speech, beyond just general listening practice? Any tips?
A simple yet highly effective practical exercise is to commit to completing, say, 10 dedicated listening exercises daily within one of these apps. As you do them, don't just aim to get the answer right. Actively focus on trying to catch the keywords, understanding the connected speech patterns, and grasping the overall meaning in each sentence, especially the faster ones. Many apps allow you to replay specific sentences or phrases multiple times. Use that feature. It's perfect for isolating those challenging rapid segments and really training your ear to pick them out repeatedly until they become clear. Treat these app exercises as your daily structured dance drills.
This all really comes back to consistency, doesn't it? If we try to connect all these amazing strategies and tools to the bigger picture, consistency seems to be the absolute linchpin. Like you said, you can have the best dance lessons, the best shoes, the best music, but if you don't actually practice regularly, you simply won't improve much.
Yeah.
How do we build a solid, sustainable practice routine that incorporates all these different elements, making it a regular part of our life, not just something we do sporadically?
You're absolutely right. Consistency is everything. Without it, even the most brilliant strategies will only yield limited, temporary results. Think of it exactly like building muscle memory for a complex dance routine. You can't just go to the dance studio once a month and expect to become a master. You need a structured, regular approach that builds incrementally over time. To help listeners visualize how this might work, here's a sample 4-week plan. This is just a framework, of course, something you can adapt to your own schedule, level, and learning style, but it illustrates how you can integrate all these powerful strategies into a manageable, progressive routine.
Okay, great. So week one, laying the foundational rhythm. What does that look like?
During this first week, your main focus should be just getting comfortable with the very basics. The English sound system, slower speeds, core recognition, learner-friendly audio. Aim for 10 minutes daily. Commit to listening to about 10 minutes of that learner-friendly audio we talked about, BBC Learning English, VOA, ESL pod. Focus first on the gist, then try to identify 5 to 10 specific words you recognize clearly. Reductions recognition. Aim for 5 minutes daily. Practice maybe 5 common reductions each day. Say them out loud, both the full and the reduced forms. Then listen specifically for those reductions in short, simple audio clips. Maybe make flashcards to help remember them. Strategic subtitles. Aim for 5 minutes daily. Watch a short 5-minute video like a simple YouTube blog or cartoon with English subtitles first. Then immediately rewatch the same clip without subtitles. Afterward, quickly check back with the subtitles to see what you missed. This is all about building that fundamental sound-to-word bridge.
Okay, so week one is really about getting comfortable with the basic steps and the initial rhythm before trying anything too fancy. That makes perfect sense for building a solid base. What about week two, once that foundation feels a bit more solid?
Week 2, stepping onto the dance floor, immersion. Once you have that foundational comfort, it's time to gradually increase your exposure to more authentic, natural English. You're ready for slightly faster content now. TV shows, aim for 15 minutes daily. Try watching a 15-minute scene or part of an episode from a regular TV show like Brooklyn 99, The Office, or something similar. Actively identify maybe 5 unfamiliar phrases or slang terms. Pause, look them up, try using them in your own sentences, then rewatch that scene without subtitles to test your ear. Podcasts, aim for 10 minutes daily. Listen to a 10-minute segment of a slightly faster, more natural podcast, maybe NPR's Up First, or a conversational one on a topic you like. Practice pausing every 2 to 3 minutes to briefly summarize the main points in a notebook. This builds your ability to track longer, more complex conversations. Daily shadowing. Aim for 5 minutes daily. Start incorporating daily shadowing practice. Use a short 1 to 2 minute audio clip. Focus on mirroring the speaker's speed, intonation, and rhythm as closely as possible, even if you don't catch every word initially. Start with clearer speakers like news anchors.
That sounds like a good progression, bringing in more natural content, longer listening periods, and that active mimicry with shadowing. What's the focus for week 3 then? Getting more advanced.
Week 3, mastering the complex moves, pattern recognition. This week is really dedicated to consciously training your brain to recognize those underlying patterns of English speech, the intricate choreography that makes fast speech flow so smoothly for native speakers. Stress and rhythm, aim for 5 minutes daily. Practice identifying and reproducing English stress and rhythm. Take maybe 5 sentences each day from your listening. Listen, clap or tap on the stressed syllables, then repeat the sentence trying to match that exact rhythm. Maybe record yourself and compare. Phrasal verbs and idioms. Aim for 10 minutes daily. Actively learn maybe 10 new common phrasal verbs or idioms this week. Use flashcards daily, but also actively listen for them in the TV shows and podcasts you're consuming. Try to catch them being used naturally in context. Daily dictation. Aim for 5 minutes daily. Dedicate 5 minutes each day to focused dictation practice. Pick a short 30-second clip. Write down every word you hear, pausing and repeating as needed, and then carefully compare your version to the accurate transcript. Start with slightly slower audio if needed, and gradually try faster clips.
Okay, so by week 3, you're really digging deep into the structural elements of fast speech, the more subtle layers of the dance. What's the grand finale then for week 4, putting it all together?
Week 4, performance day, real conversations. Exactly. This is where you take all the skills you've been practicing and put them into authentic, real-time practice, stepping fully onto the live dance floor with partners. Language partner chat. Aim for 10-15 minutes, 1 to 2 times this week. Try to schedule at least 1 or 2 short 10 to 15-minute chats with a native speaker using one of those apps like Tandem or HelloTalk. Focus on actively listening, maybe even ask your partner if they can help you practice recognizing a specific reduction you've been working on. Conversation group. Try one session this week if possible. Join an online or local conversation group for one session. Practice that technique of focusing on just one speaker for a period, noting their specific speech patterns. Try to identify maybe 3 distinct patterns, phrases, or accent features you hear during the session. Review and celebrate. Weekly habit. Critically, continue to review your listening journal, which you've hopefully been keeping throughout these weeks. At the end of week 4, take some time to actively celebrate the progress you've made over the past month. Look back at your notes from week 1. Seeing your improvements written down, however small they seem day to day, is incredibly motivating.
That's an incredibly comprehensive and actionable plan. It really breaks down what feels like a huge, daunting goal into manageable daily and weekly tasks, building up systematically. Fantastic. But, even with the best strategies and the most tailored plans, learners inevitably face roadblocks. Those moments where you feel like you've tripped on the dance floor, maybe even fallen flat. What are some of the most common challenges people hit when trying to train their ears for fast English? And more importantly, how do we overcome them while staying motivated on what can feel like a long journey?
That's a very important consideration because setbacks and plateaus are a totally normal part of the learning process. It's easy to start strong with enthusiasm, but maintaining that momentum when things get tough can be, well, tough. There are indeed several common roadblocks people encounter. First, just feeling overwhelmed is incredibly common, maybe the most common, when you first start consciously trying to dissect fast connected English, or when you encounter a particularly fast speaker or a difficult accent. It can honestly feel like there's an endless, insurmountable amount to learn. It can feel like you're just not making any progress at all.
Yeah, that feeling of drowning in sound, like you'll never catch up. I can imagine that's demotivating.
Exactly. The most powerful solution here is counterintuitive, perhaps, but it's to start incredibly small. Don't try to listen intently for an hour straight from day 1 if that feels daunting. Begin with just 5 minutes of focused, active listening per day. Seriously, just 5 minutes. Make it achievable. Then, as your comfort and confidence gradually grow over days and weeks, you can slowly increase that time, maybe to 7 minutes, then 10, then 15. Small, consistent efforts compound powerfully over time into significant gains. It's like learning just one new tiny dance step each day. Eventually, a whole routine.
So make it sustainable, not intimidating. Building those tiny habits. Okay, what about that frustrating experience when you just can't seem to catch all the words? It feels like you're constantly missing things and it undermines your confidence.
Yes, missing words is another frequent frustration. Learners often get really hung up on trying to understand every single word spoken, but honestly, that's an unrealistic expectation even for native speakers sometimes, especially in noisy environments or when listening to complex topics or even just when someone mumbles.
That's a good reminder. Even native speakers miss things sometimes. It's not about perfection.
The key here is to consciously shift your focus. Aim to catch the main idea, the overall gist, the core message of what's being said, rather than agonizing over every single preposition or article you missed. Don't let the pursuit of 100% perfection paralyze your comprehension of the 80% you did get. And remember, as we mentioned earlier, consistent dictation practice over time can specifically help improve your ability to discern more of those individual words. But always keep in mind that overall comprehension of the message is the primary goal in real communication.
That's a truly helpful reminder. Focus on the big picture, the overall melody, even if you occasionally miss a few notes along the way. Okay, and what about when you encounter a completely different accents, one after the other? Like one day you're getting used to an American sitcom, the next day you try a podcast with a thick Scottish accent. It could feel like starting over again.
Ah, yes, the wonderful challenge of different accents. English has such a rich, sometimes bewildering variety of accents around the world, and jumping haphazardly between vastly different ones, especially early on, can be very disorienting for your ear and brain. Like trying to learn 5 different dances all at the same time.
So what's the strategy? Is it best to pick one and stick with it for a while before branching out?
My advice is usually to stick primarily to one major accent initially. Choose one that's most relevant or accessible to you. Maybe General American, received pronunciation British, maybe Australian or Canadian English. Focus your listening practice mainly on that one accent for a solid period, perhaps for a month or even 2. Get really comfortable with its specific vowel and consonant sounds, its typical rhythm, its common reductions. Really internalize that one sound system first. Only after you feel significantly more confident and comfortable with that primary accent should you then gradually start introducing another one. You could do this by dedicating, say, 1 week just to listening to media featuring the new accent. For example, watch only British shows for a week if you started with American. This phased approach prevents your brain from getting overloaded with too much phonetic variation too quickly, allowing it to adapt more systematically.
That's a very practical way to manage the complexity and avoid getting your mental wires crossed between different sound systems. I appreciate that phased approach. Makes a lot of sense. Is there one overarching tool or habit you'd recommend to help people track their progress across all these areas and stay accountable to really see how far they've danced over time?
Yes, absolutely. A simple but incredibly powerful practical tool that ties everything together and helps maintain both accountability and motivation is to consistently keep a listening journal. It doesn't have to be complicated. Each day, or maybe each time you do a focused listening practice session, just take 2 minutes to jot down. 1. What did you listen to? E.g., The Office S2E3, NPR Up First podcast. 2. How long did you listen actively for? 15 minutes, 5 minutes dictation. 3. How much did you understand? Maybe rate it on a simple scale of 1 to 5, where 1 is very little and 5 is almost everything. Be honest. 4. What's one new thing you learned or noticed? E.g., learned idiom, bite the bullet, finally heard hafta, noticed speaker X uses rising intonation on statements.
So documenting the journey, giving you a tangible record of progress and specific learnings.
Precisely. Then make it a habit to quickly review this journal maybe once a week, perhaps on a Sunday evening. Look back over your entries for the past week, seeing your progress documented in black and white, noticing your understanding score gradually creeping up, seeing the list of new phrases you've learned grow, remembering the challenges you overcame is a huge motivator. It provides tangible proof. It's your personal dance progress report.
That sounds like a wonderful way to celebrate those small victories and track that gradual, sometimes hard-to-perceive improvement. Okay, finally, wrapping this section up, how do you sustain the motivation needed for such a long-term goal like this? Progress can sometimes feel slow or even invisible day to day. How do you keep going? Keep dancing?
Staying motivated over the long haul is absolutely crucial, and you're right, it's definitely a marathon, not a sprint. Here are a few key strategies. First, set small, achievable goals. We talked about starting small, but keep doing this. Instead of having a vague, daunting goal like, I want to understand everything perfectly in fast English, focus on micro goals. Aim to understand just one new phrase today, or aim to successfully complete just one 30-second dictation exercise without giving up. These small, concrete goals are less intimidating. They build momentum through frequent success, and they provide a continuous sense of accomplishment that fuels you forward.
Breaking it down into tiny, manageable wins keeps the momentum going.
Second, celebrate those wins. Did you finally understand a whole movie scene without needing subtitles? Did you successfully navigate a short phone call in English? Did you catch a tricky reduction in a fast conversation you overheard? Acknowledge it. Reward yourself, even in small ways. Maybe treat yourself to something nice, or simply take a moment to feel proud of your achievement. Positive reinforcement is powerful. Recognition fuels motivation. Don't just move on to the next challenge.
Acknowledging those milestones, no matter how small, is crucial for morale.
Yeah. Third, mix it up to keep it fresh. Don't let your practice become a monotonous chore. If you only ever listen to the same type of podcast or watch the same genre of TV show, you'll likely get bored and your progress might stall. Actively alternate between different types of content. Listen to a serious podcast one day, watch a silly comedy the next, try a dictation exercise, then maybe have a casual chat with a language partner. This variety keeps the practice engaging, prevents burnout, and keeps exposing your brain to different aspects of the language. If you're bored, you're much more likely to stop practicing.
That's great advice. Small goals, celebrate wins, keep it varied. Is there one last exercise people can do, maybe occasionally, that can really dramatically show them how far they've come to really bring home the reality of their progress?
Absolutely. This one is really satisfying. At the end of each month, or maybe even every couple of weeks, deliberately go back and re-watch or re-listen to a specific short clip, maybe 2 to 5 minutes, that you remember struggling significantly with when you first encountered it a month or two prior. Choose one that felt overwhelmingly fast, confusing, or just impossible back then. Find it again and listen to it now after weeks of consistent practice using these strategies. And what happens? You will almost certainly be amazed at how much easier it feels this time around. Phrases that were a blur might now be clear, the rhythm might feel familiar, you might catch jokes or nuances you completely missed before. This tangible, direct comparison, experiencing the same content with newfound ease, is incredibly motivating. It provides undeniable proof that your consistent efforts are genuinely paying off, even if the day-to-day progress feels slow. It's like replaying a video of yourself dancing from a month ago and suddenly seeing how much smoother and more confident your movements have become.
That's the perfect analogy for it. It really drives home the progress you've made. This has been incredibly insightful. It seems training your ears for fast English speech is truly like learning to dance to a completely new beat. It absolutely takes practice, dedication, and using the right steps like the ones we've discussed today.
But the key takeaway is that it is possible, and soon you will be moving more comfortably with the rhythm. These strategies we've covered, from foundational active listening and understanding connected speech to strategic immersion and recognizing patterns, will undeniably help you get there. Whether your goal is to follow those fast-paced movies without constantly hitting pause, to ace your professional meetings with confidence, or simply to chat more effortlessly with native-speaking friends, these techniques are broadly applicable and incredibly effective.
Remember, if you're listening, you're probably closer to mastering fast English than you think. Just keep practicing those steps, stay consistent, and you'll soon be dancing with much more confidence.
And perhaps think beyond just comprehension, too. Consider how this improved listening ability doesn't just help you understand words, but actually opens incredible doors to a much deeper cultural understanding. You start to catch not just the literal meaning, but the nuances, the humor, the shared cultural context, the subtle emotional cues that make human communication so rich and meaningful. It allows for more confident, more authentic, and much more engaging participation in any English-speaking environment. It really can transform listening from what might feel like a passive, sometimes frustrating activity into an active, deeply rewarding experience. It's truly a skill that expands your entire world.